All right, lovely summer day in Charlottesville, and over my shoulder is lifetime best friend Doug, who seems like he's always been a fan of the boat project. So he agreed to come down from Boston for a couple of days and help work on the boat. With another person here, like, it's not simply sequential. Things don't only happen in series. So it's actually kind of interesting to think what has to happen when two people could be doing things. And so, for example, I cut the tiller hole, but I couldn't finish it because basically Doug was going to be fairing this. And so the point was, once we put in the fairing compound, it didn't make sense to kind of pollute everything with the mahogany dust from filing, chiseling, chunks, and whatnot. And so now we're going to sand this later in the day, but at that point I want this more or less finished, so that basically we'll be able to kind of like vacuum and clear it, because once this is sanded, then we can paint it and then we can lay canvas, which is one of the goals for this visit. And so moving from one thing to another and lending time for like the fairing compound to cure is kind of a new set of scheduling and logistical challenges. One of the things that was most nerve-wracking about cutting the tiller hole is like misplacing it. So I put the pattern up, eyeballed it, started conservatively with just a couple of holes with Forstner bits, and then expanded out from there, moving to first a jigsaw and then rasping, filing, and then sanding. I'm going to be working on the aft deck bulkhead a little bit more, and especially the transom. Here, I'm trimming the kind of edge of the transom, shaping it up. I've got it into kind of rough shape, but there's still a bit more to do at the edge here. So I've got to kind of round this, make it a more gentle curve, and then maintain this bevel. So that's that. Here's what I'm up to for the next, I don't know, half hour.
Worked on the aft deck. A big part of that was to take the initial structure Dale had built and sand it, add some additional screws to hold it down. Then we added the appropriate compound. Dale can fill that in on the video that sealed that. We sanded that down, made sure that it was nice and level and smooth. Then we painted over that with a white, thick kind of poly-based paint for this type of boat. Again, Dale will help with those pieces, but it was nicely painted and sealed. Then we put canvas over, painted that, did all the stapling and attaching, trimming the canvas, so that was fantastic. While I was here, I also helped Dale bring down his boat trailer. My car has a hitch, so we brought that down to his backyard, navigated that, and then helped him work on thinking about drilling holes into the keel. One of the things that I enjoyed about doing the boat was it had parallels to a hobby of mine, which is classic arcade collecting. And in classic arcade collecting, there's the electronic components, but in addition to the electronic components, there's a non-trivial amount of woodworking to actually restore the cabinets, paint them, seal them, stencil them, apply artwork. Oftentimes you have to recreate parts of the cabinet that are missing. So I've enjoyed that in my personal life, and seeing that applied to a boat was some interesting parallels.
Yeah, anything to add?
No, that's great. And if anyone, you seem to be, everyone I imagine are YouTubers out there. If you want to get into classic arcade games via YouTube, the channel is now no longer being maintained, but go to John's Arcade. It's a free plug for him. John's Arcade is an awesome YouTube site, hundreds of videos on classic arcade building and restoration. So,
Are you on any of those?
I'm not in any of those, but that is a cool series. And that's actually what got me started in arcade collecting in 2013.
All right, so I've trimmed up the transom and I like the way that it's rounded and beveled, following the profile in the plan, so that's pretty good. You can see I've got the tiller hole here and the tiller works through it. I may have to extend it up a little bit. And then we've got a spot for the trim molding that would come up here, kind of close off that seam and also kind of make it look a little more neat and finished. And my friend Doug gave a primary coat of paint here, and I think I'm gonna give it one more for extra protection. In addition to all the things that I got through with Doug, I also painted the bilge and kind of got that defined. All right, so the bilge paint was a kind of aesthetic milestone, an aesthetic achievement. Basically, getting a little bit more paint on the interior of the hull made it feel like we were making some real progress that represented visually. And so I was real happy to do this. I didn't want to get ahead of the sole beams construction and installation, but I kind of did it in parallel with it because, of course, the bilge goes to the edge of the sole beams. And so here you can see me, right, basically trying to get every single nook and cranny. And I was using Total Boat's Total Bilge. All right, bilge painting in progress. That's epoxy base, so basically you're gonna lose a brush whenever you use it or do a coat, and that took a while. I had to do it in several sections and I had to kind of clean and vacuum out every section, sand it a little bit, and wipe it down to make sure that all of the detritus, debris, dust, and so forth was cleared out before I painted. And then spent some time putting in the sole beams, the structure that holds up the sole in the bottom of the deck that you basically stand and move around on. For that, there's a lot of individual pieces and they've all got to line up. You don't want to sag in your sole. You don't want something that's crooked. You basically want it to line up. And so, of course, there's a lot of like fairing and there's a lot of like measuring with a string line or with a straight edge to make sure everything lines up and that you're within a certain set of tolerances. And so that took a long time. With that completed, then I was like, all right, time to move on to the 4 bulkhead frame. I want to have 2 access panels, one on either side, and so I had to build a frame out for that so that I've got the panels, but that it's also sort of reinforced and that I can build the bulkhead on that. All right, gang, I think that's it for today's work. I'm pretty happy about this. I've basically got all of the framing in for the bulkhead, for the forward bulkhead. The only thing that remains to be done here on the framing is 2 pieces of blocking here and here. I'm gonna have access panels here, and then I'll have the blocking here. The blocking will serve as the top of the framing for the access panel. And I think I'll basically be able to do like a 6-inch high, 7-inch high by 10-inch wide panel on each side, and still have enough room for, let's say, the 6-inch cleats, maybe 2 here and 1 or 2 there, something along those lines. Anyways, I'm pretty happy about this, and so I think we're gonna call it a day. So I was pretty happy with the progress. Doug brought a lot of energy and some focus to the project, where I might not have spent 4 solid days on it if I hadn't had someone there who made a special trip for it. And so that really kind of invigorated and gave me some momentum. And then that carried forward. We had some difficulties with the ballast keel, and I think I'm going to have to recast this. I'll take a look once I get back, but there's just too many problems. I've had too many errors and slight mishaps that kind of have accumulated, and I think I need to basically start over, build a new mold, recast it, and get it done right. That's a bit of a bummer, should that be the case, but I think it's the right thing to do. I decided to put a first coat of thinned varnish on the transom, and I forgot how dramatic the effect would be, and so I realized I kind of needed to document this. Wow. Brings out the grain, nice and dark and rich. I'd love it if this mahogany didn't have so many of these kind of like gnarls and burls, but I guess that just gives it a little bit more character. Just trying to get this nice and thin. I thinned it 50% so that'll soak in, but I also don't want to have any fat edges and whatnot. I can come back in succeeding days. Particularly absorbs heavily on the end grain down here, and it has a real dramatic effect.